In the previous video, we saw that there are either 3 or 4 members of the schwa family of sounds, depending on whether you speak a British type variety of English or an American type variety of English. We also saw how there were 2 ways of making these schwa family sounds, depending on whether they were preceding a consonant or whether they were preceding a pause or another vowel. In this video, we're going to be talking about how to go about teaching these things. If we look at the phrase bananas and cream, we see that it has 5 syllables, and 3 of them would conventionally be considered to contain schwas. Now, under the analysis which Catford made, which we talked about in the previous video, these all contain open transitions between the consonants which flank the so-called schwa sounds in the middle. Catford pointed out that these open transitions are very different from normal vowels. They're shorter in length, they're much less distinct, sometimes they're not even voiced. These sounds, the incidental sound which you get in the middle isn't even a voiced sound, and of course all vowels have voiced sounds in them as part of them. They are voiced sounds. So if you take the word potato, which supposedly has a schwa in the first syllable, that supposed vowel sound is sometimes not even voiced. So the fact that these open transitions, although they're called schwas, are very indistinct, very short, very unclear, creates a problem when you try to teach them using any listen first type approach. So either listen and repeat, or in fact any approach where you start off by giving the students a recording and you try to get them to copy what they hear on the recording. They won't hear the schwas. If their language doesn't use schwa in the same way as English does, then the students just won't hear the schwas. And in order to get over that, one ends up pointing them out, exaggerating them, and suddenly the essential quality of a schwa, the fact that it's a minimal sound necessary to create a syllable, is lost. It's very unsatisfactory. We take an articulatory approach, as you know, as you've been seeing in the video so far, and what we recommend is that you teach the actions which underlie any aspect of English pronunciation, and then the sound will come out all right automatically as a result of the students doing the right things. So this is what we also do with the schwa type family of sounds. This is the first of Catford's 2 categories of schwa type sounds. And if you remember from this list, which we saw in the previous video, the way that you move from the words on the first column to the words in the second column is that you create an open transition between 2 of the consonants. And to do that, all you have to do is just finish the articulation of the first consonant before you start the articulation of the second one, as opposed to the 2 articulations overlapping as they do in the first column. One way to teach this is to demonstrate to students that they already know how to make this type of open transition. They do it or they can almost certainly do it in their own language when they stutter. So if you take a stutter, you're basically making a sound repeatedly and then you're going on and moving on into a word. So for example, you might go boot or foot. If you start by doing that, you'll notice that you're not trying to make any sound between the consonants which you're stuttering, but an incidental sound does appear. And this is exactly the same process as happens in English. Here's an example of how you can make use of this, get your students to produce phrases in English which are pronounced perfectly, in exactly the same way as native speakers produce them. We've got a question, what's the time? And with the clock, we've got a clock as shown. And the way to get students to produce the right answer is to start back chaining. So start with the final word in the sentence, to, and then add a couple of stutters before that, to. Take another stressed syllable in the phrase, quar, and add a schwa before that, a quar. And then put these 2 elements together and you get a quar, to. If we add on its at the start, we get its, a quar, to. And if we speed it up a little bit and get rid of the pauses between those 3 elements, we get it's a quar, to, which of course is exactly the way that a native speaker of English would pronounce it. Now, that was a case where a true stutter on a single letter would give us the result which was needed. However, there are often cases where an open transition goes from one consonant to a different consonant. However, the activity is still a stutter-like transition. So to get your students practice for this, take a series of words like the ones we've got on the screen, and just practice making stuttering tight transitions between the 2 consonants before saying the word itself. So, if we take the word at the top of the list, polite, the way to work with that would be to go pla, as if you were stuttering between a P and an L. And then when one is happy with the fact that it's just a straight pl, finishing the P before starting the L, one can add in the rest of the word with, of course, a stress pulse on the second syllable. So you get polite, and the word will come out as it should do. If we take another example further on down, we can get, if we take the, for example, nautical, we can go tk, and then put it into the word itself, nautical. So, the best way we found to teach Catford's first category of schwa family sounds, the open transitions, is using true stuttering or stuttering type transitions between two consonant sounds. What about the second type of schwa family sound which Catford identified? This is where you get a schwa sound either at the end of a word, before a pause, or before a vowel. Well, in the previous video we discussed this, and we made the point that the most important characteristic of these sounds is that they're not made with any kind of a stress pulse. There's no abdominal push when you make a syllable which has one of these schwa sounds in it. So what we suggested you do was to take, for example, the list of words on the left, to say them with an abdominal push, and then keep the same abdominal push on the same syllable, and then make the other syllable, the second syllable in this case, second and third syllables in some cases, on the remnants of that initial push which you made. In many cases this is enough. If students are making a physical push with their abdominal muscles and are careful not to make an additional push for the subsequent syllables, very often this is enough to give a very good result in terms of the second type of schwa. However, even doing this, your students may be producing schwas with too much prominence. Because of course in their language, in their first language, it's very possible that there's no equivalent to a reduced vowel, and they have the expectation that if there's going to be a syllable there, there should be something more substantial than either an open transition or the very reduced type of schwa we've just been talking about. If that's the case, you can make use of the same practice cycle that we recommended for practicing stress. By using whisper and loud whisper, the students will be making so much effort on the stressed syllables that the unstressed syllables will more naturally fade into the background. So start off by saying a phrase with a normal voice, then getting them to say it with a whisper and a loud whisper, making sure that when they make the stressed syllables there's a good strong abdominal push. When they're doing that, the relationship between the stressed syllables and the unstressed syllables is likely to be much more authentic than it was originally. And if they keep the same respiratory system actions when they go from loud whisper back to normal voice, if they keep the same balance of effort between the stressed syllables and the unstressed syllables as they were making during loud whisper, then almost certainly their unstressed syllables, the ones with schwa, shwi, shwu and schwa, will start coming out more authentic. And you can confirm to them that native speakers really do speak this way. This really is how English sounds.